Welcome to Devils in the Details. I am your host, Annie DeGraw. Today we are talking all things mindfulness, why it matters. As we come out of over 12 months of isolation and transitioning back into a new normal, there is certainly a lot to consider. And how aware are we of our present moment, and how might that help us in this transition? Joining us today to talk about that, we have Dr. Nika Gueci, and Nika is the Executive Director for Center for Mindfulness, Compassion, and Resilience at ASU. Nika, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Annie, for having me here today.
Mindfulness. I think over the last year, I have heard more about mindfulness and the way to seek inner calm than I ever have before. What is mindfulness, and how do we apply it to our everyday lives?
Yes, mindfulness demystified. It is simply a presence in the moment. So mindfulness is a way to spend time in the here and now. We spend so much of our time ruminating over the past or worrying about the future, but really the only moment that we can manage is the one that is right in front of us, right? So that's what mindfulness is. It's a way to be awake and aware for all aspects of our lives, the pleasant and the unpleasant. And I would like to note that mindfulness is not something that we invented here at ASU. It is something that has been passed down through generations, cultures, religions for centuries. And we here at Center, we are pollinators, we are teachers of the values of mindfulness, compassion, and resilience. And what I'd like to share in terms of living in this new landscape that we're living in right now is that mindfulness can really be a driving force in our lives. So mindfulness can not only produce inner calm, but it can shed light on both our internal and external issues and give us a way to determine how we want to respond to problems, to challenges that we're having. And it can give us a way to target that change and have a focused effort to create that change. So it's active, it's not just passive.
The interesting thing that I think, well, first of all, I love that you call yourself a pollinator of this. I think that is the most beautiful way to frame this. And it's interesting, I think at the beginning of the pandemic, so many of us were just sort of gritting our teeth and burying it and trying to get through and really not thinking about the present moment because it felt like it's the only way we could sort of stumble through. What I hear you saying, though, is that actually looking at that moment, turning it over in your mind, might be the thing that helps us transition back.
Yeah, and mindfulness can help build resilience. So what I think a lot of us are looking for right now is a way to manage through this ambiguity, through this post-pandemic landscape that we're living in. And resilience is not just an ability to bounce back like a rubber band from adversity, but it's really a way to come back stronger. And mindfulness skills can help us with that resilience. We're starting to see a lot more movement of people going back to work, of people traveling. So society is changing in a way that it hasn't before. And mindfulness is never going to take away any kind of ambiguity. It's never going to take away our stressors, but it will create a space between stimulus, that stressor, and the response, how we respond. And we can choose to respond automatically, habitually, like we always do, or we can choose to respond in a voluntary, choice-filled way.
It's such an interesting thing because it really, that question about how we respond, whether it's going to be sort of a reflex or we're going to be thoughtful and mindful about it, I think is something a lot of people maybe didn't have the opportunity to even stop and think about before 2020 hit us. One of the things also coming out of this, it's not just mental health where this is important, but also has a physical health aspect. Can you talk to me about that?
Yeah, we've seen a lot of research studies about mindfulness and impacts on physical and mental health. So it can help with, anxiety reduction, lower blood pressure, stress reduction, and a greater ability to regulate our emotions, to have emotional regulation. But it's important to remember that mindfulness in and of itself does not equal stress reduction. It does not equal lower blood pressure, but it can be a side effect. And it is a dose response effect, meaning that the more we practice, the more benefits we might see in our lives.
just like regular exercise, really. It's about exercising the mind to a certain degree. Coming out of the pandemic, it has been tough. There has been a lot of ups and downs through it. Do you think that, though, perhaps these last 12 plus months have actually made for a more compassionate populace, more thoughtful and mindful?
It's a really good question, because I think that the images that we've seen throughout this year have shown kind of the opposite. But it is my hope that we can become more compassionate towards both ourselves and towards others. And living through the uncertainty of this past year maybe provided us a chance, like you said before, to take stock of our lives in a way that we never have before, or weren't given an opportunity to before. We might have become more aware of what matters to us, what values are most important to us, and how we derive our energy, what we need to restore. So I think that taking time, living our values, all of these ideas that have started bubbling up, and doing so without apology, taking that time without apology, can lead to more self-compassion. And then as a society, to answer that question, is that we've had so many different stressors in this past year, both individually and as a whole. And we've experienced not only these general life stressors that we've had, but major events that have really shaken us to the core. And being mindful of these shared human experiences, our shared humanity, can lead us to a greater awareness of one another, and we can meet on that ground.
Nika, it is so heartening, I will say, to think that there is some type of silver lining that's coming out of this, and mindfulness really does seem to be one of that. I love mindfulness without apologies. I love that. I want that tattooed on my eyelids. I think that's a beautiful sentiment. Nika, I want to thank you so much for joining us to give us a brief insight into the work you're doing. I want to allow you to let viewers know that you have a lot of resources available and where they might be able to find those.
Sure. So our website is mindfulnesscenter.asu.edu, and we have a lot of resources, videos, written resources that are available for you to share and use as you like.
So check that out. Absolutely. Nika, again, thank you so much for joining us. And until next time on Devils in the Details, stay safe and be mindful.